Yes, ma'am, Sister Peggy.
I put it in the chat. That's how you can contact him by email.
Okay, yeah, I see that. Thank you. I'll contact him. But I actually thought that it just gave me a different way of looking at Arabic. Um, just something else to add to the toolbox, you know. Um, I didn't get a chance to watch the whole video. The one I did watch, there was which one was he speaking on? I can't remember it now. Um, but yeah, I ain't got no problem, you know. I ain't got no problem listening to what other people have to say. And you know, it's just like the stomach, you know, it's like the digestive system. You take in what you know you need and the stuff that you might not be vibing with, you just let that go, and that's fine. So
Mhm.
Sister Angela, before we get started, any thoughts, cognitions, postulates, questions, concerns, corrections, anything before we?
Oh, I watched The Arrival again yesterday, and I like the time narrative and how they looked at time.
The
So I would
Arrival?
probably put, yeah, The Arrival. I would put that on my list again.
That
And
was
it's
that was with
Amy
oh
Adams,
oh
redhead
yes, yes.
girl.
Oh yes.
That's a good one.
The Tomorrow War is kind of like the same thing.
Okay, all
There's a lot of
right. Then
similarities
yeah,
to
yes, sir.
it. Okay. Let me pull this up. Let's pull this up. Okay, so we're gonna briefly let me pose this question to the family. Is there anyone here that does not or has not engaged in word clearing yet? Anyone? So everyone understands word clearing?
I do, yes, sir.
Okay. Sister Peggy, you understand word clearing? I mean, if believers don't understand it, that's okay. But uh, the question is, does everyone? Come on now. Here we go. Okay, I'm gonna cover it real quick, um, especially for those that will be getting involved in any type of extension course or any study. It really in any subject matter. What causes us to stop or avoid studying is that misunderstood word. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
So what we're going to do is we are going to do some word clearing. There is a free course you can take at Scientology.org that gives you the basics with regards to the three barriers of study: misunderstood word, too steep a gradient, and lack of mass. In the student hat tech, it gets more detailed and more involved. Okay. I'm going to cover this real quick, and then we're going to get into the statement that was made by the minister in study guide number 4. And we're going to take what the minister instructed us to do in A Torchlight for America, where he says you place Allah at the center of your study, and then whatever subject you're studying, you make it as if you are studying yourself. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So the mnemonic device that I used when I started the student hat tech, I was blessed to start it. Yes, Leave the World Behind, most definitely. Excellent movie. That's kind of giving us a sign of what we need to be doing. We need to get our survival kits together. Um, I started the student hat and then the COVID hit and I didn't get a chance to finish it. So now, God willing, I can complete that and then start the process, inshallah, to get rid of this aberrated mind and to go clear. Um, okay. So the mnemonic device is 2 words, word noises. Now that's easy to remember, right? Okay. Working in the fire service, working as a firefighter, and those working in the medical field know the importance of chunking information into easily understood and remembered mnemonic devices. Is that correct, Sister Peggy? You had to use, did you use any mnemonic devices to remember?
In biology, no,
Yes.
on old Olympics towering tops,
You
we
were
learned the nerves.
on old Olympus towering tots, a something and something
Uh-huh.
through some hops.
Yeah,
You
so
read my
that's
mind. Those are the 12 cranial nerves.
incredible.
But yes, you're taking what it's called chunking. You're taking large amount of information and you're putting it into, it's almost like a mental zip file. And then as long as you remember what each letter stands for, then you can unzip that information. Um, I'll give you one. Here's another word you should remember. The word slice. The word slice. SLICE. And then the word slice is an easy way to remember all the things you have to deal with when you're auditing. And it's on the Hubbard chart of evaluations. It's on the second row down. S stands for secondary. L stands for locks. The I stands for imaginary, I think it's imaginary input. The C stands for chains. E stands for engram. So it's an easy way to remember information that you have to audit when you're taking someone through session. Does that make sense? Okay, so that's just an example. So for word noises, these are all the steps you have to go through to clear a word.
Brother Lukeman,
Yes, sir.
your word for chunking is actually making me think how you've taken what used to be rote memorization and brought it right up into the modern time
Mm-hmm.
in accord with what the most honorable Elijah Muhammad and the minister direct us that we have to do,
Mm-hmm.
bring things right up into the modern time.
Mm-hmm.
Because I struggled with chunking when I was in medical school. That was something that the newer generations had formatted and were very familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas when I first started academic education years ago, it was you pound it into your head one way or another. You just
Mm-hmm.
figure out how to remember things.
Mm-hmm.
So you all that know how to chunk are in accord with bringing things right up into the modern time.
Praise be to Allah. I wish I would have had this tech when I was in college. I would probably be a doctor somewhere by now.
Yes, sir.
um, because in college it was just like you just have to keep going over it, and the mistake that we make in college is we cram, and what we do is we're overloading our short-term memory with the
Mm-hmm.
hopes we can remember it, and then 2 or 3 weeks after the test we forgot everything we studied, and then we wind up getting a 4-year degree on data that we no longer even carry around in
Remember.
our mind anymore. But we
Mm-hmm.
we have a certificate that we paid 40, 50, $60,000 for, but we don't
Mm-hmm.
have the information. So I wish, and not only that, but back when I was in school, we didn't have the YouTube and the cell phones and Google. I mean, I don't understand how children can't pass college now with
Resources,
all the
access.
resources. I'm gonna be honest with you, brother. If I had the time, well, I'm trying to finish school right now. If it were not for things that I need to find online, because my class right now is an independent study, so it's up to me to figure it out. If I didn't have internet and Google, and you have different college professors that actually film their courses and they put it on YouTube,
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know if I could finish my degree. It would be way too difficult. So anyway, um, so in the word noises mnemonic device, the W stands for the word that's being defined. Okay. Um, those that are able, make sure you have your dictionary handy because we're gonna take a journey. Okay. We're gonna take a journey. Ask questions. Why are questions important? What is the word root for the word question? What's the root word for question? Look at
Say
brother.
again, sir.
The root word for the word question.
Quest.
Quest. A quest is an action or a journey, and the suffix tion means a process. I think it means a process. So asking questions is the same as taking a mental journey. Okay. We want to ask questions. So you start out with the word that's being defined. Okay. The O stands for operation. Now, the reason why I put operation now some of this is what I learned in the Church of Scientology, and some of this is what I've kind of added myself. I added the word operation because in doing word clearing, I took this and I applied it to mathematics. And there's some of us who have participated in the Zoom meetings where we did equation clearing. Has anyone done the equation clearing?
Yes, sir.
Okay, where we actually take equations in algebra and we apply the tech to the equations, and this is how we get rid of our mathematical engrams. Because some of us have a fear of mathematics, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Sister Peggy, that was a real subtle yes, but it's real. Okay. A needle was stuck in our brain uh, somewhere down the road in school, whereas as a child, and I'm gonna say prior to the age of 6, we had a thirst for learning, and then something happened in school where someone stuck a needle in our brain, and then some years later, for some reason, we developed this fear for mathematics and science. So the word clearing, I mean the equation clearing, um, we coined the term equation processing. So we're taking what we're learning from the Church of Scientology as a tool, and we're applying it to the concepts of mathematics, physics, chemistry, and biology. Does that make sense? Okay.
Yes, sir.
So I use the word operation because in mathematics, the operations are add, subtract, multiply, and divide. So I'm able to take the same format for word clearing and apply it to math and physics. And I'm going to explain what operation is according to words in a minute. Then you have the root word itself. 9 times out of 10, if not 100% out of 100, anytime we deal with the English language, that word is a derivation of a word that comes from another language. Does that make sense?
Right.
Okay. English they call it a bastard language.
Mm-hmm.
Everything in English comes from something else. If you look at the word sheriff, well, we know that comes from what? Sharif.
Sharif.
Okay. Sharif, yes, ma'am. If you look at the word alcohol, 9 times out of 10, a word in English that starts with the letters AL is going to come from Arabic. And the same is from Spanish, because there's a lot of derivations from Spanish that actually come from Arabic. If you look at the word alcohol, it actually comes from the Arabic words al-kahal, which means the spirit. Al-kahal, A-L-K-U-H-L, alcohol. So we deal with the root words. Another thing about the root word is as you learn the root words, and if you are in the area of where you're taking a lot of tests based on either based on your employment or based on you need it for school, when you take tests and you come across a word that you may not necessarily understand, if you can apply some of these principles and break the word down, it'll kind of give you an idea of what the word means. And then you can kind of discern, if especially if it's a multiple choice, you can kind of discern which answer is the nearest to your understanding. And that's how you get those extra points when you're taking an exam. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. After a root word, then you're looking up the definition, but you want the definition that is in the context in which you're using the word. Okay, because you can get one word has 5, 6, 7, 10 different definitions, but the primary definition you're concerned about is the definition that has to deal with the context of what you're using. Okay, I remember one thing Brother Jabril said once, when you're looking up definitions, and I'm paraphrasing. He says, when you're looking up these definitions, the first couple of definitions, those are the surface definitions. He said, but if you want to really get to the deep words, you go all the way down. It's like, in archaeology, the further down you dig, the more information you get about a culture. It's the same way in a dictionary. The more you go down the list of definitions in a word, the more depth you get in understanding the different variations of what that word means. Everyone clear on that?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Then after you go through that, okay, and this is really the first step to word clearing. You begin with the word, you because when you go through the student hat, the study tech, there's a specific order that they follow. Okay, so I'm kind of not following the specific order, but I'm covering all the different elements of the word clearing. But when you do it at the org, they want you to do it specifically in the exact order in which is described. And if I'm not mistaken, the exact order is you start with the word, you look up the definition, you find the root word, and then you use that word in sentences. Okay. Okay. So,
Brother Lukman,
yes, ma'am.
okay, in what you just said, so where does operation fit into that?
Oh, I'm gonna deal specifically with that. I'm gonna explain each one of these in kind of detail. Actually, operation, I'm gonna explain in detail. Well, in the operation means what is the operator? So if you take the word house, okay, the operator, in the way that I remember it, that represents the parts of speech. Is it a noun? Is it a pronoun? Is it a
Okay,
verb? Is it an adverb? Okay.
okay, yes,
But I
sir.
use the word operation so that I can remember one mnemonic device, but I can apply these same concepts to the study of mathematics. So instead of trying to learn two different things, I just learn one thing and apply it in two different areas. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir, it made sense when you said, is it a verb? Is it a,
Okay.
noun? That made sense.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what's the operator? So then there's notes. The N stands for notes, and notes could mean what is the history of this word? When was this word first used? Okay. Now, why is that significant? We had a discussion not too long ago. I can't remember where we had to discuss who it was that had the discussion. But we were talking about the name Jesus. And in the conversation, we we're saying how his name couldn't have been Jesus. And the proof of that would be if you study the English language, the letter J, according to etymology, the letter J didn't come about until the 15th century. So that was just a point of discussion that if this letter didn't come up until this time, then it couldn't have been his name. Does that make sense?
Mm.
Okay. So notes could be the history of the word. Um, uh, do we know what a homophone is? Okay,
Same
homophone. Two different words that sound the same. Is that what it is? Okay, and then you have what's called a homonym. Okay, So there's just different things to know about a word. I mean, we can even go as far as, where was it used? The O stands for other definitions. So you begin with the context of the word in the context of what you're using it, but then look over the other definitions of the words. The reason why this is so important is that when we apply this principle to Arabic, because we go into the Holy Quran, we find the Arabic words and we're able to connect different words in Arabic to the tech of Dianetics. If we limited ourselves to just one definition of the word, then we would not see the other definitions. And the other definitions open up the ayats of the Holy Quran. It opens these ayats up to a whole another level of study. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay, let me explain it like this. In math, you have an equation. If you put in one number, it's going to output another number, correct? Y'all with me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, for example, if we take the equation for circumference of a circle, right? Okay, C equals 2 times pi times r. That equation doesn't change, correct?
No, sir. I mean, yes, sir. Doesn't change.
No matter what size of the circle, that
Mm-hmm.
2 is always going to be there. Pi 3.141 is always going to be there. And that letter R is always going to be there. The letter R is the point where you input a number. Okay. So if we were to do the quick math on that, if you were to input into R 3,963, which is half of the diameter of the Earth, if you plug in that number, you should get 24,896 miles, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So now you can take that same equation. If you input a different number into R, then you'll get a different circumference, correct?
Yes, sir. Okay,
That means if you go into the problem book and if you look at from question number 16 in the problem book and down, we're given the diameters of the different planets, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And if you divide the diameter by 2, then you get the radius. And if you
Right.
put that radius into the formula, you'll get the circumference of all those planets. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
Okay. So the ayats of the Holy Quran, to me, are like equations.
Mm-hmm.
So if you take a word in the Holy Quran, remember, Allah says some of these ayats are decisive. They are the base of the book, and some are allegorical. And those in whose hearts is perversity seek to deceive others by that which is allegorical, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so there's the rules of interpretation. So we're not trying to deceive, we're trying to go deeper into the Holy Quran, in the words of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, and find the jewels that Allah might show us, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So when I look at a verse in the Holy Quran, I personally don't look at it as just an ayat. I look at it as an equation. And then I look at the different words in that ayat the same way I would look at the components of an equation. And then by clearing the word in Arabic and look at all the different meanings of that word, when I replug that word into the ayat, then what happens is it outputs another level of understanding that verse. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
I hope I didn't confuse anyone on that one. Okay. I look at the Holy Quran as a book of, in the words of the minister, the Holy Quran is a book of formulae. It's a book of equations. Okay. Then you have what's called idioms. Now, what is an idiom? An idiom is a statement. It's a group of words. And if you clear the words, By clearing the words, it does not identify the meaning of the idiom. I'll give you an example. Here's a statement: kick the bucket. If you clear the word kick and clear the word bucket, in the combination of those two words, would it describe to you what that idiom means?
No.
Okay, because kick the bucket means what?
To die.
Means to die. But if you clear the word kick and clear the word bucket, you're not going to find death in there, right?
Right.
Okay. So an idiom is a statement, and a statement is a group of words that has a meaning. But if you break those words up separately, you will not derive the meaning of that idiom based on those words.
Good teaching. Yes, sir.
Sister Ania.
As you said that, I was reminded of in England, mainly from East London,
Mhm.
there's what you call they're referred to as like the Cockney, and it's called the Cockney accent.
Mhm.
And there's a whole group of words, phrases and words that they use, which you just your explanation made me think of it. Um, it's words that they use in place of the real meaning.
Mhm.
And I'll give you an example. They'll say apples and pears, and apples and pears means stairs. So there's no connection between
Oh,
apples and
damn.
pears and the word stairs. They're like a flight of stairs.
Uh-huh.
So that's you just made me realize that that's what you would say that the Cockney that Cockney language or verbiage is a whole group of idioms.
Let me see if I can give one to you, Sister Ania, based on England. So I just described an equation, right?
Yes.
So in the circumference, C stands for circumference, and you got your coefficient, and if you plug in R as your radius, then Bob's your uncle. Does that make sense?
Oh, and we use that all. I mean, I use that all the time. Still say it a lot of the
Bob's
times,
your
and
uncle.
people will look at me and say, "What?"
What
It's
does
like,
Bob have to
don't
do
worry
with
about it.
it?
But you saying Bob's your uncle means that you've arrived at either the right answer or you've solved the problem, or there, like it's like saying, and there you have it.
There you have it. That's
Saying
that's the
something and
you
you say,
arrived
and
at your
there you have it.
destination, right?
Yeah.
Bob's your uncle. I heard Idris Elba. Uh, I heard Idris Elba explain that.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I got that from Idris Elba. Bob's your uncle. Okay. There was one, I just said this to myself the other day when I was at work and I stopped. I said, oh, that's an idiom. So what happens is if I'm leaving headquarters, I get on the radio, engine three's on the air. Put the thing up. I said to myself, I said, on the air. It's just a statement that we make, engine three's on the air, truck one's on the air. If you kind of look at it, it just, I don't know, it makes no sense, but it's just something that we say in the fire service. Okay, it's just one of those statements.
Brother Lukeman,
Yes, sir.
the discussion that you all just had with Sister Anya made me to think about in the lessons where we know that the trader made an interpretation. Could it be that the interpretations were spoken in idioms, and idioms are particular for those who know the real meaning of what the idiom is spoken of, where the minister has told us that we have an entanglement of words, that our issue is with, and I'm paraphrasing, but our issue is with the entanglement of words. And so the enemy, it seems, has taken all of these idioms that they know the real meaning behind, but in usage with those who may not know the real meaning of the idiom, we are then entangled into confusion. So the trader could make an interpretation that we would receive more gold than what we already had in our own land, and thereby entrap us into slavery. That was just a cognition as I was listening.
Oh, yes, sir. And you know what? Along that same line, Brother Wadu, we do it all the time, because if we're at work and we're amongst ourselves talking, and then if someone else comes into the room, we change our language in a way that we can now converse in a way that they won't pick up what we're saying, and we do it instantaneously.
Mm. Mm.
We disguise what we're saying in symbols. I mean, we might not have even looked at it from that standpoint, but think, go back on the time track. Here's a little straight wire. Go back to a time when you were in a room having a conversation with someone, and someone entered the room, and how you changed the language. And both individuals instantaneously knew what you were talking about, even though none of us had gone to a class on how to change the language, but we just knew it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So now the S stands for synonyms. Okay, so when we look at a synonym, we're looking at other words that have the same meaning as the word that we're using. Okay. So and synonyms are good to know, especially if you're a writer. You might want to portray the same concept, but if you use the same word over and over, then your writing is considered to be redundant, correct? That with
Yes,
me?
sir.
Okay, but if you can say the same thing, but say it in different ways, you have a variety of ways of saying one concept, then because nothing is more annoying than reading someone's writing and they have the same word over and over and over and over and over. Okay. Under the notes section, since we're talking about synonyms, under the notes section, you can also include antonyms. Does that make sense? Okay. Now, elements. E stands for elements. This is not a part of the tech of Scientology. Elements comes from years ago. I was teaching a course. I was teaching anatomy and physiology for a college course, and I was teaching medical terminology. And in the elements, and I'm gonna deal with them real quick here, but the elements deals with in the medical field, you got to understand the significance of prefix, suffix, combining forms, and word roots. Okay. I was teaching part of the class, and then there was another brother who was teaching. He was teaching medical billing and coding. But in order to understand the medical billing and coding, individuals had to understand the medical terminology. Okay. And then the S stands for using the words in sentences. Okay. So in the word clearing, those who have been on course, you've experienced this. You've yawned as much as you've tried not to, and then someone has swooped down to your table saying, was there a word that you misunderstood? Has that ever happened to you? No one? Am I the only one? Sister Angela's laughing, so that means that it happened.
Of course it has.
Yeah. I try so hard when I'm in the courtroom. I try so hard not to move a muscle because I'm like, I don't like being bothered when I'm studying.
Right.
But if you yawn or you tap your pen, you do anything, they swoop, they're on you. Okay. And then they'll say, okay, you do the word. Okay, what does this word mean? And if there's any type of, Sister Honey knows what I'm talking about. If there's any type of communication lag, okay, and we'll be trying to fight hard to come up with some
They
old,
get the demo kit too.
Then you got to do the demo kit. You got to use the word in sentences. And when you don't understand the word, they have you looking like that brother from In Living Color. You be making up definitions for the word. Remember that from In Living Color?
Yeah.
You be trying hard to make it sound like you know what you're talking about. They're like, no, you need to let's go open the book. and then you got to demo kit it, and then you get a sentence. Okay. So if you look at the first letters, okay, that's word noises. Okay. That's word noises. That's just the first word, the first letter of every word. And again, I use this, Sister Peggy, I can send you this PowerPoint if you want it. This PowerPoint is quick. There's only like maybe two more screens. Okay. I use this for everything. Now, we're gonna look at the operations real quick. Okay. Operation. Let's book. Yes, let's book. Yeah, we need people to say let's book nowadays, but we need the book to be the real book because no one reads anymore. Okay. So just like in a math equation, in a basic equation, you're going to have what's called variable terms, and you're going to have different types of terms. You're going to have coefficients. You're going to have your operators, right? Add, subtract, multiply, and divide, correct?
Right.
Okay. If you're dealing with an equation, then you have to have an equal sign. Okay. So there's certain elements that you'll find in almost in every equation. Okay. Same concept applies to reading. You're going to have operations in reading. So now let me ask this question. What's the difference between a noun and a pronoun? Anyone?
The difference between the noun and the pronoun?
And
Is it one proper?
Well, go ahead, Sister Peggy.
a noun is more specific. Name,
Specific.
person, place, or thing is more specific.
Mhm.
A pronoun is something like she, he.
Mhm.
uh,
Yes, ma'am. So now if you look at that as an equation that is specific, okay, and let's go back to the equation for circumference, 2 pi r, right? 2 is specific, right? Pi is specific because pi stands for what? 3.141, right? Yes?
Yes. Yes,
Okay.
sir.
So, but r, that's not specific, is it? Because
No, sir.
R can be anything, right?
Mm-hmm.
So just like in grammar, you have nouns and pronouns. It's just like in an equation, you have your constant terms and you have your variable terms. You see how they're kind of connected?
Mm-hmm.
Now, what's a verb?
Action word.
Verb describes an action word.
Action.
What's an adverb?
Ly.
Ly. An adverb modifies a verb, and the word modify means what? It means to change, right? So he did it quick, or you could do it quickly. Yes.
Yes, sir.
Quickly is your adverb. Okay. So the verb is like addition and the adverb is like multiplication. Does that make sense? Okay. What's a conjunction?
A connecting word like and.
Uh-huh. Now I'm gonna date all the old heads on here. Conjunction junction.
What?
What's
Your
your
function,
function?
hooking up all the phrases.
Phrasing clauses. Okay, so that's all the Saturday morning schoolhouse rock, eating cereal, Super Friends, Saturday morning.
That's right. That's right.
You young folks don't know nothing about that. Okay. So when you look at the word conjunction, the prefix con means with. Okay. And then you look at the word junction, junction means to join, to bring together. So the word conjunction technically means to bring things together. Sister Ani said, I know nothing about that. Don't even try it, Sister Ani. Stop it. So and, or, in mathematics, these are your symbols that you use, like the union, like union, junction, disjunction, okay? But a conjunction takes two expressions and connects them. I was in the house and I was eating bean pie. So that and takes two expressions and connects them together, okay?
Mhm.
Then you have what's called a preposition. What's a preposition?
It's an independent clause.
Can you get a little more specific?
My old brain cells don't think of any can't think of something specific right
Okay.
now.
It is an independent clause. If you look, just let's break the word down. What's the prefix?
Before.
Pre. So pre actually means before, and position is a location in time and space, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so it's something that will come before a location. So if I say on the bridge, then that word on is my preposition. If I say over the hill, over comes before the position. That's the preposition. Does that make sense? Just
Okay.
The preposition, if you will, the preposition is I was taught to think of it in relationship to a house. In the house, in front of the house, inside the house, near the house, out of, toward the house, under the house, within the house.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yes.
it had to be something. You use the house and everything that you could do in relation to the house about space, time, and place. You could use that.
That's
how
perfect.
in the house.
That's perfect. So let's put the ARC between the two ideas now. So the house is your position, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the preposition is that word that comes before the word house.
Mm-hmm.
In, over, around, through the house. Does everyone follow that preposition? And I keep asking because I can't.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
In the house.
Then you have what's called adjectives. An adjective modifies a noun. So I can either say a car or I can say the red car. So the word red is modifying the noun. It's more specific. If we had a table, if I said to you, I said, reach behind me and grab a book. If I said, reach behind me and grab a book, you can grab any book, right? But if I said, grab the red book, that's more specific. Okay. So adjectives modify nouns. Then you have what's called articles. Okay. So in articles, you have, the minister has mentioned this before, you have what's called the definite and indefinite, correct?
Yes, sir.
I could say, if I said, reach behind me and grab the book, what would you say?
Which
book?
Which book? But if I said grab a book,
then
that can be any book.
you
right?
still say which book.
Yeah. So the is specific. Okay. So the is specific, A is kind of general. Those are your articles. Then you have what's called your interrogatives. What, where, why, when, and how. Okay. There's also what's called exclamatories. I forgot to put that in there. An exclamatory is when you say, wow. Okay, it's just a word that has emotional content connected to it, correct? Mr. Ania.
Brother Lukman,
Mm-hmm.
may I ask a question about, I was in grammar school 1,000 years ago, and the definition of adverb was to describe a verb, and adjective describe nouns. And I noticed you use modify. What's the difference?
It's just two different words that mean the same thing. Same thing.
Synonyms.
Mm-hmm. The same thing.
Okay.
Yeah,
All
modify just means to change or describe.
Okay.
Same thing. And here's also the beauty. It's weird because I saw Sister Ania's hand go up and I said, go ahead, Sister Ania. And I was like, wait a minute, Sister Ania's voice sure sounds different.
Yeah.
because I can't see everyone on the screen, but okay. But yes, ma'am, those words are the same. Those words. So I guess I was in grammar school about 1,000 years ago myself, because that's one of the ways it was described. Okay.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Now, this right here in the word clearing and doing it this way, this is almost like reformatting your brain cells if you want to start learning languages. Because really, language for the most part have the same format as far as verbs, nouns, and whatnot. But in some languages, their adjective comes after the noun. Okay, like I could say the red car in English, but in French, I think it's voiture rouge. You have the noun and then you have the adjective. Does that make sense?
Mhm, mhm.
Yes, sir. Like the order of operations change.
It's like the order of operations change. Yes, ma'am.
Mhm.
Um, so here's the elements. This is specifically from the standpoint of medical terminology. But the reason why this I included this in word clearing is because I take a lot of classes, and eventually what happens is the more you do this, and if you take exams and you come across words that you may not understand, you'll start to recognize word roots. And when you can recognize a word root, and 9 times out of 10, when you're taking a multiple choice exam, there's going to be two answers that are totally incorrect, and you should be able to see those from a mile away. And then there's going to be two that are very, very similar. One's correct, one is almost correct, but there's something in the one that would negate it and remove it. And it's a small little subtle word or a phrase in the way in which it's used. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Down the road, I'm willing to do this with the believers. If you're getting ready to take any type of an exam or course, let me know. I'd be more than happy to do a specific Zoom on test taking. Okay. I can share with the believers what I use to take my exams. And a lot of it comes from taking the tech of the Dianetics. And I use that to study the Supreme Wisdom in the Problem Book. And based on that, for me, it prepares my mind when I take my exams. Okay. But the prefix, anytime you take a word in the medical terminology or just in general, your prefix is going to tell you the location, number, time, color, or frequency of something. Okay. So if I say, if now Brother Wadud and Sister Peggy might be able to just spit these answers right away. If I said periorbital,
Around the eye.
yeah, peri means around, and orbital, you're dealing with the eye. Okay. The word peri is telling me location. If I say hyperventilate, the prefix is
Hyper.
hyper, which means what?
Excessive.
Overactive, excessive.
So we've got a room full of scientists in here. Okay. If I said
That's right.
hypoglycemia,
Underactive.
That's underactive.
underactive, and glycemia is
Sugar.
really
Mhm.
glycemia is two word groups combined together, which is describing what?
Why?
Glycose
Yeah.
and
And
emia,
glucose, yeah.
glucose and blood.
And then the blood.
Okay, glycemia, glyce is sugar and emia is dealing with blood. Hypoglycemia is low blood sugar.
Low sugar.
And you'll come across this actually when we deal with mathematics. Here's a word to re-stimulate some of us: trigonometry. See, so trigon means what?
Three sides.
Three-sided.
Three sides. Trigon means three sides, and metry means to measure, right?
Mhm.
Okay, so trigonometry is simply what?
Measuring three sides.
It's geometry that is applied specifically to triangles. but it's one of the biggest words, and it's the class we probably avoided, and just the word alone causes a restem and puts us in another valence, right? Silence. Ain't no one saying anything about trigonometry. Okay. Then you have the word root, but now you'll understand word root because that's actually part of your word clearing. Okay. 9 times out of 10 it's probably going to be the Latin or Greek. Okay. Then you have your suffix. Your suffix is going to give you your condition, your disease, or your procedure. So when we looked at the word trigonometry, the suffix was metry, and metry is describing a procedure, right, to measure. Okay. So anytime you come across a large word, try to see if you can break it down. And by breaking it down, it will give you a clue as to what it means. And the more you do this, you'll start to hit these words automatically. Okay. And then you have what's called the combining form. So if I say, what's a good one? If I say encephalitis, if I say hydroencephalitis, hydro is what?
Water.
Okay. And then when I say encephal, I'm talking about the
The
brain.
brain.
Okay.
Mhm.
So now in hydroencephalitis, that letter O is a vowel that combines these two words together. So it flows. Okay. If you don't have a vowel there, then the words are real choppy. Okay. And then itis doesn't mean sleepy, but we always use it to mean sleepy. I got the itis, but itis means inflammation. Okay. You'll see this in Arabic as well. You'll see certain vowels in certain places, and it allows the language to flow. Sister Sultan, I'm sure you've seen this in your study of Arabic, correct? You still with us? Okay. So here's where we're going to begin to do our little experiment. We're going to start with study guide number 4. We're going to read something that the minister has said. And we are going to see if we can look at the statement, but see it from the perspective of astronomy or science and the tech of Dianetics. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So the study guide starts out like this. It says, in our scriptural reading assignment last week, study guide number 3, Overcoming Difficulty, we saw that Allah God created the entire solar system, including the great symmetry of its arrangement and the motions of the various planets, placing each in its own orbit. Okay, this is Holy Quran, Surah 21, ayahs 30 through 33. Now, let's look at, I'm gonna point out a word, and let's see if we can break it down real quick. Let's look at the word symmetry. What does the word symmetry mean?
Same
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 what?
line. Yeah.
Same what?
side.
Same side?
No,
Measurement,
equal side.
Oh, symmetry.
Look,
Size.
Equal
Measurement.
side.
look at
It's
the
size.
suffix. Someone said it.
Size.
Nope, look at the suffix.
measurement,
Metry. You see that word? We just said trigonometry. Now we come with the word metry again, right? Measurement. Symmetry. It's same.
Similar.
Huh?
Oh, nothing. I'm sorry. I said similar.
No. Similar is a synonym. Yes. Okay. So this is where we start looking at words, but now we can start breaking these words apart. Okay.
Hmm.
So the entire solar system, including the great symmetry of its arrangement. So let's look at the minister's statement as a formulae. Okay. Remember, Here's his words. He says, number one, remember we went over this. This was a cycle of action. Number one, he says, Allah is a scientist who speaks in the language of formulae, correct?
Yes, sir.
Then he said the Most High Elijah Muhammad is the second scientist who what? Looked into the formulae and broke it down, yes?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Let me give you an example of that. If we look at why isn't the devil settled on the best part of the planet Earth? Okay. That was a statement given to him by the Savior, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So if that is a statement given by the Savior, and if he's the first scientist who speaks in the language of formulae, can we say that question number one is more than just a question? Can we say that it's a formulae?
Mm-hmm.
Or not formulae, a formula. Formulae is the plural for the word formula. So question number one is not just a question. We could say it's a formula, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
Now, when you look at how the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad answered those questions in 1935, okay, because the earth belongs to the original black man, and knowing that the devil was wicked, there would not be any peace among them. What did he do? He was taking that question, taking out specific parts, and breaking it down, right? He looked into the question, and then he began to break it down, right?
Yes, sir.
Why did Musa have a hard time to civilize the devil? 2000 BC. Look at the answer that he gave. He said because he was a savage. But then he gives the definition of savage. Savage means a person that's lost the knowledge of himself, is living a beast life. Then he tells you about Musa. Musa was a half-virgin man and a prophet. Then he breaks down 2000 BC means before Christ, right?
Yes, sir.
Civilized means to teach the knowledge and wisdom of the human family of planet Earth. He looked into the formula, and then he broke it down. Okay. Now, what does the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan do? The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, based on his words in that lecture we watched, he begins to break down the complex truths so that even a fool will have a hard time to understand, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay. So when we look at the words of the minister, if we just glaze over it without looking into it, there's going to be some data we're going to miss. In other words, it's almost like we have to audit what the minister says. What does that mean? Read it. Then when you get done reading it, go back to the beginning, go over it again, and then do what?
Pick up more available data.
Pick up more data. Okay. So when he talks about Allah created the entire solar system, including the great symmetry of its arrangement, what is meant by symmetry of its arrangement? How can we look at that? What data can we extract from symmetry of its arrangement?
It's similar to something else.
Okay, let's take this walk. Okay, so now you're saying the solar system is similar to something else. What is the something else that is similar to? Self, yeah, we can say
Body.
self. Body, okay. Anyone else? There's no wrong answer. Understand, your cognition is your cognition. This is called oiling the rusty locks. Okay. Your cognition, there's no wrong cognition. So don't be afraid to shout something out, but it has great symmetry of its arrangement. That means it has to be similar to something else. Sister Anya.
When you say similar to something else,
Mhm.
going back to one of Wahid's favorite quotes, which is from the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan in his lecture, Holy Day of Atonement. Is it 2005, 2009, Wahid? So when the minister says that if we want to study government, first of all, he's likening the government to the solar, the heavenly bodies, the sun and the 9 planets. And then he says that if you want to study government, study how God made you.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm seeing the great symmetry there in its arrangement
Mm-hmm.
of the universe likened to the structure of our body ourselves, this
Mm-hmm.
the the brain and the 9 systems of the body.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm seeing that in one sense, and then I also saw, let's see, the great symmetry of its arrangement was, oh gosh, what was it? It was something. Let me come back to it because it was something I
Okay.
saw in the measurement.
Okay.
I'll come back to it when it
Okay.
comes.
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead, Sister Angela.
Okay, yes, sir. So I cleared the word sim,
Mm-hmm.
meaning the same and also meaning together.
Mm-hmm.
And I looking at the great symmetry, because I was really looking at the metry part as size,
Mm-hmm.
and which can also mean measurement.
Mm-hmm.
It brings up the B. The B is something that it just baffles the mind of scientists because they don't believe that a bee should be able to fly
Mm-hmm.
because of the size of its wing, yet a bee flies. So in space, you have the alignment of the planets,
Mm-hmm.
suns, the stars, the constellations. And no matter what size they are, they all travel at the same rate.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, for me, the light of the sameness is the giants and the least among us. No
Mm-hmm.
matter how great one may seem as far as what they know,
Mm-hmm.
it all leads back to a singularity
Mm-hmm.
that we all must bow to, just like the universe is bound to Allah,
Mm-hmm.
who is the master of it. So I see that great symmetry as being, no matter what the measurement or the size, no matter how great or how small, it is all in Allah's control. That's how I
Mm-hmm.
see it.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Now you mentioned the B. Do you remember where in Closing the Gap the minister speaks about that?
I'll find it for you. Give me a minute.
Okay. Anyone else on great symmetry and of its arrangement? But also says, and there's a conjunction, the motions of the various planets, placing each in its own orbit. So now we have a great symmetry in the arrangement of the solar system. Okay. A great symmetry. But now he's also saying that there's something connected to the motions of the various planets and placing each of them in its own orbit. Okay. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Say
Now,
that again, Brother Lukman.
if we look here, it says the great symmetry of its arrangement, and then you have the word and. So now you have a conjunction. So now there's something else we have to look at. So we can't just look at just the great symmetry of its arrangement. Now we also have to factor into the equation the motions of the various planets. Because now ask yourself this question. If the great symmetry, and when we said great symmetry the first time, Sister Peggy pointed to herself. So there's something about the great symmetry that connects our study of the solar system to the study of ourself, correct? You with me? And there's something about the arrangement of the solar system that connects to the self, correct?
Or could it be the systems of the body?
We could say that. We could say that. But now it's also, now if those concepts relate to the human being, because Minister Farrakhan says what? Place Allah at the center of your education. And when you study a subject, you're studying yourself. That means when we study the solar system, who am I studying?
Ourselves.
You're studying self. So when Sister Peggy's studying the universe, Sister Peggy is studying an external representation of Sister Peggy.
Mhm. Along with us studying Allah at the same time.
Exactly at the same
Since
time.
we all are Allah.
Yes, ma'am.
Mhm.
Yes, ma'am. But now when I look at the motions of the planets, studying the motions of the planets is supposed to teach me something about myself. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Mhm.
I'm supposed to
planet,
get, oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
sorry, sir.
No, go ahead.
Each planet, and it says that in the next paragraph that where it says the planet Earth, but each planet is inclined on its axis so many degrees to the plane of its own orbit. So for the Earth, that's 23.5 degrees.
Yeah, we're about to go down that road too.
Yes, sir. Okay, let me come back to it.
Did your file clerk find that other file you were just talking about?
Yes, it was what Sister Angela said. I was typing it up as she said it. I was
Okay.
putting it in the chat.
Okay.
I kind of thought you was going there too.
Yes. Right, that's exactly what it was.
Okay.
Uh,
Okay,
oh,
yes.
okay, I know what it was. The fact that we have the brain and the 9 systems and the sun and the 9 planets. So each planet is in its own orbit around the sun, but it inclines to the sun. They all incline to the sun, and they're all connected. They all have their spin and rotation is caused by the light of the sun. Likewise, all of our 9 systems of the body are tied in and linked to the central processing unit of our brain through the nervous system, through the central nervous system. So the 9 systems incline towards the brain and get their instruction and are all connected, but they're connected through the brain.
Now, here's an interesting point, and I've said this many times before. In the words of the Oracle, this right here will cook your noodle. The 10th system, we're dealing with the brain, but we're also talking about the nervous system, correct?
Yes, sir.
So in the nervous system, you have what's called the central nervous system, then you have your peripheral nervous system, then you have what's called your autonomic, and then you have your sympathetic and your parasympathetic, correct?
Yes, sir.
One thing L. Ron Hubbard speaks about, and science today is speaking along these lines as well. They're saying along the lines that traumatic experiences are stored in the nervous system. Okay. So now, interesting thought is go back and watch Mother Tynetta's lecture she did on the 10th system, but then look at the 10th system and try to see if you can listen to her speak, but at the same time connect it with the tech. You might find something very, very interesting there. That's just a thought. Okay.
Yes, sir. And incidentally, cook your noodle would be an idiom.
Yes. Cook your noodle is an idiom. Yes, it is. Thank you, Sis Nadia. Okay.
Okay, I got the closing the gap. I believe it's page 190.
Yeah, just go ahead and read that
Let
statement.
me pull it up. I was going trying to do the word search in the book. I do have an e-copy of it.
Let me know when you find it.
Okay, yes, sir.
So in other words, we're looking at with the motion of the planets and the relationship of that planet to its orbit, but we want to use this to gain an understanding of ourself or we want to sprinkle up some other ingredients into this and spice it up a little bit, we want to say, okay, how is the study guide, how is the knowledge of self, and how is the tech connected? How can we connect the three? How can we find ARC? So then going to the next paragraph, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan says that the planet Earth is inclined on its axis approximately 22 degrees, 30 minutes to the plane of its own orbit. This inclination, along with its rotation on its axis and its revolution around the sun, makes life forms as we know them here. If the Earth were to alter its motion, it would lose its balance and leave its orbit. So here's the point to consider with what the minister has said here and the application to ourselves in the text. So the Earth is inclined on its own axis, but it's inclined to the plane of its own orbit. So here's the key words in here. Okay, here's the key words. It's inclined to the plane of its own orbit. Now, next statement is that this inclination, along with its rotation on its axis and its revolution around the sun, make life forms as we know them here. So this sentence is telling, this is like an equation with three variables in it, 3 points. This is saying, if I said the question, what are the three things that are keeping the life forms in harmony with the earth? The answer would be its inclination, its rotation, and its revolution, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the three things that are keeping life in harmony on the earth, number one, the inclination to the plane of its own orbit. Number two, its rotation on its own axis. And then three, its revolution around the sun. Okay. So it's giving you the three things that are keeping it in balance. And then then the minister's also telling us that if it would alter its motion, what would happen? So alter motion,
Chaos.
lose balance, leave orbit, right? We have two
Mm-hmm.
cycles of action here. Does that make sense, everyone?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, there's two cycles of action. Cycle number one, inclination to the plane of its own orbit. Two, revolves around its own axis. And three, revolves around the sun in its own orbit. Cycle of imbalance would be alter its motion, it's going to lose its balance, and it's going to leave its orbit, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So this implies if it does not incline to the plane of its own orbit, if it does not rotate on its own axis, and if it does not revolve around the sun, then what just happened? Its motion has been altered, it's going to lose its balance, and it's going to leave its orbit, correct? Does that make sense, everyone?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, my new is big.
So what we want to do is we want to look at these words and see what do they have to do with ourselves as an individual? Because there's sometimes we're balanced and there's sometimes we're imbalanced, correct?
Yes, sir.
So when we're imbalanced, did something change where we're no longer inclined to the plane of our own orbit?
Mm.
Did we stop rotating on our axis? And did we stop revolving around our sun or our center? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Go ahead, sister.
Brother Luke,
No, who was that?
Brother Lamar.
Oh, go ahead, brother.
Wow. My new is baked right about now. Um, I'm trying to understand this thing because, good Lord have mercy. I'm looking at it, and this is how I view this thing, and how the universe, how it works, and how it movements, and how everything is in line with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm getting from it is how our body system, our structure, is symbolic to the universe and its structure.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like how the sun moves everything else in the universe, like its rotation and speed and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And then I looked at it as, okay, maybe that sun could be the brain, the mind inside of the human brain.
Mm-hmm.
Because if that goes out of orbit, it's just like your mind is going to, let's say that you stop studying, you stop doing a lot of things. That's like that light that's in your brain is going away. So therefore, your body functions and everything else is going to be on a wobble. You know what I'm saying? So that's going to start, everything's going to go off course. That's
Mm-hmm.
what I'm trying to say. And that's I think that's what I'm getting from it. Like it's symbolic to the universe and how the body structure is formed, because once that light is gone, everything else is going to be off course. And that's what I'm saying that that's what I take out of it, and that's what I'm getting from it, because all the truth is my news is big right over now, but that's the only thing I got from it.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I'm gonna say.
All right, praise be to Allah. Thank you, Brother Lamar. And you just sparked a thought, and I'll wait till after Sister Angela and Sister Anya. On when you deal with biology, like the basics, you have the 10 systems. There's actually one more system that is a part when you start getting up into anatomy and physiology. There's another system, and I'm going to mention it afterwards. And then there's something else we can add to the solar system. So when I'm looking at the solar system personally, I'm looking at it from the standpoint of the number 12. But I'll explain that after Sister Angela and Sister Anya. Go ahead, Sister Angela.
Praise be to Allah. While Brother Lamar was speaking, I was thinking about the minister said, what happens when we deviate a little bit and still are traveling forward or supposedly straight? By the time we get to a destination, we can measure how far off that little deviation has gotten us. That's what I got from him. I did want to read some of, because it's actually almost the entire page for what of 190 and closing the gap. So I'll read a couple of these paragraphs, but I would say to us to go read it, and it's in sync with what we're talking about here. So it states, a simple expression of what we're getting into is that according to the law of nature, a law of acrodynamics that I read several years ago, that the bumblebee's wingspan was too short for his body weight. So it is not supposed to be able to fly, yet it flies. The simple reality is that this insect flies by an aspect of that law of which those who say it is not supposed to fly are ignorant. The truth is, this insect flies in violation of their understanding of this law. It's flying in accord with aspects of this law that is beyond or higher than what they knew, or of which they are even aware. As these scientists come to learn the high aspects of this same natural law, the less improbable this insect's ability to fly will seem to them. In other words, the bee's activity makes sense to them as they gain more sense. Increased knowledge and understanding reduces the senses. The idea of feeling reduces the senses, the idea of feeling of the improbable. So,
Yes, ma'am.
there's a little bit left, but I would read it.
So based on what you just said, doesn't that harmonize what we talked about last Zoom meeting with the flawed third universe?
Oh, absolutely. I see it when you read that Holy Quran verses. To me, this is what we all are talking about. We're finding this symmetry
Mhm.
Yeah.
So they're saying the bee, based on its structure, shouldn't be able to fly, right?
Yes, sir.
It's the same way that those that run the third universe say that black folks can't be God,
Mm.
but we're about to prove that wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Sister Angela.
Praise be to God.
Sister Ania.
Uh, I guess my comments were along the same line as Brother Larry's comments. I was looking at the three areas that keep us orbiting around the sun: the inclination, the rotation on the axis, and the revolution around the sun. So I likened each of those. When we first come into these teachings, we develop a certain alignment to Allah. Initially, you could say that the inclination, and it could be broken down different ways, but this was just one way of looking at it, that the inclination could be our prayer to Allah directly, and that the revolution around the sun would be our study of the teachings, and our study of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan's example in our midst, and staying directly connected with him and what he instructs us to do. And then the rotation on our axis is you could be likened to our practice of the teachings, putting it into putting what we study into practice. And as long as we're doing all three of those, we take on growth. We have more life in us. We're able to, we become productive, and we do more. We learn how to work as a connected unit, not slowing down the motion of anybody else, or slowing down our own motion, not becoming a drag on anybody. But we increase, working together, we increase each other's motion. So our spin and rotation and revolution is actually increasing the spin and rotation of everybody else. And so it's like I said, we makes life forms as we know them here. So there's life in the mosque, and an increase in the mosque. And we're in balance, and we're in orbit. But then as Sister Angela said, then the deviation comes in, either through maybe old engrams that we have, or new engrams that we form. Somebody comes and whispers in our ear, knocks us off our square, knocks us off our post. It causes us to, they put a whisper in our ear about another believer, or about whoever is in leadership among us. And we start looking at them all cross-eyed. And now, they might say, well, yeah, minister wants us to give in charity, but I'm going to send my charity straight to the minister. I'm not going to give it to the local, because I don't know what they're doing with the money. That type of thing. Now we start withholding our charity, and we start wondering and feeding that negative weed about what they're doing with the money. And so that's knocked us off our post, not altered our motion. And so we start to slowly leave our orbit, and we're not giving and participating like we were before. And so when this happens with not just us, it's affecting other believers in the mosque, are being affected too by this negative spirit, negative personality in the mosque.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of doing what we're supposed to be, as checking it and casting that out from among us, or saying, "Get thee behind me, Satan," or reporting all weakness and wrongdoing, we're allowing the weeds to grow, and it's choking out the life.
Mm-hmm.
And so now we alter the motion, we become out of balance. And so the compensation that was in place to correct the wobble in our motion so that we could move along smoothly, now it's out of balance. And so now motion comes to a stop.
Mm-hmm.
And consequently, death takes over.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no more growth in the mosque. So I'm just using that as one example of how this could be looked at.
Oh, that was perfect. That was perfect. Thank you, Sister Anya. That was a great way of putting it, because that's exactly. So now we took the minister's words from the study guide. We took his words and used his words like a demo kit to learn about our astronomical theology. And at the same time of learning astronomy, we're learning how things operate in the mosque, correct?
Yes, sir.
Perfect sense. Thank you. Sister Angela.
I'm glad she mentioned that, because it kind of goes with what I'm about to say. Now, looking at this information and looking into the universe and making a hypothesis about what was known at the time that scientist Shabazz wanted to, when he put the bomb in the earth. Did not he know, or was it his intention not only to harm life on the earth, but to disrupt the motion of the universe?
Hmm.
And I say that in connection to what she said, because we come into the nation, and I get into an argument with some people because I don't get on the Savior Days Saturday Night Live calls. And I don't get on them because I understand that this is my duty. I don't need somebody to inspire me to pay my Savior's Day gift. That's just me, Sister Angela. When I'm marrying in the act of Shabazz, and what seems to escape us in emotion, or this deviation or this disruption of motion that happens that have this type of effect, is that we tend to forget the order of things, the way things are supposed to go. Now, according to the message to the Black man, the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad says, even if we knew the secretary was stealing, to continue to pay our charity, because so Allah can bless us. He'll deal with the secretary, but it's the intent of what we are doing and upholding our duty. So it reminds me of these laws set in place with the planets and just about everything. But man, the thing that was not the highest manifestation of Allah, that was given free will, is the only thing that appears to be out of tune with the nature of things. So that's what I got out of it.
Yes, ma'am. Pay it regardless. Pay it regardless. Go ahead, Sister Sultana.
Assalamu alaikum. I just want to make an observation as I was listening to Sister Ania. I noticed how she started off with very hesitant, and I was counting how many times she said before she finished her sentence. But once she got into the flow of what she was saying, it went away totally. She never said it again until she went to the end, and she came out of it, and she came back to speaking in her own voice. And it was just something that struck me very strong. I said, wow, look how she's flowing. And it's clear about every word that she's saying. There's no hesitation. And then at the end, she went back to the hesitation. It was just an observation that came over me when I was listening to her. I thought it was very interesting.
Well, that's kind of what happens when a person's about to take off in their baby plane. You gotta,
Exactly. Yes.
that altitude. But once you get there, she got into that laboratory. She started manipulating them atoms and molecules.
Yes. Yes. It was very obvious to me. I was like, wow, that was beautiful.
All right, praise be to Allah. Brother Wadud.
Yes, sir. Throughout the discussion, when you first opened it up in this direction of the inclination and orbits and the symmetry, I went to the supreme wisdom and looked at some numbers that the Savior gave us as the planets are aligned in distance from the sun. I'm still playing with those numbers, but something that stood out to me from a physics standpoint that this world and its education has given of understanding, knowing that we don't recognize and understand it to the depths that Allah has knows. But from what this one book of mathematics that we've learned from tells us, that there are different forces, gravitational forces, based on the mass, MASS, of an object, that it can exert upon different objects in its proximity. I looked at the different planets. We know that we have the 4 inner planets, and then there's an asteroid belt, and then you get to the larger planets outside of that asteroid belt. And what the numbers showed me, the inner planets, Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars, we are millions of miles away from each other, as well as the millions of miles that each of those planets are away from the sun. Then when you get to the outer planets, they are even farther apart from each other. Jupiter, in between Saturn and Jupiter, are 403 million miles. Then between Saturn and Uranus are 896 million miles. You get between Uranus and Neptune 1 billion miles. And then there's 1 billion miles between Neptune and Pluto. And I just found it interesting that those larger planets require more distance from each other, in combination with the thoughts of how each of them exerts its own gravitational pull on whatever may be in its proximity. But because they have such distance between them, then those gravitational forces that each of them could exert are neglected among the different planets, so that we all as planets revolve in harmony and symmetry in Allah's solar system. That's all I wanted to offer. Thank you.
Thank you, brother. That's a good segue into what I want to explain to Brother Lamar. You just segged us. You just built the bridge right to it, brother.
All praise is due to Allah.
Because you mentioned the 4 inner planets, right?
Yes, sir.
And you mentioned the 5 outer planets. But you
Yes,
also
sir.
mentioned the asteroid belt, right?
Yes, sir.
So technically, we could say that there's 10 items in our solar system. The 4 inner planets. We got the 5 outer planets. Okay.
Mm.
And we have the asteroid belt that gives us the 10. If we include the sun,
Mm-hmm.
that would be 11.
Mm-hmm.
But now there's something else that's taking place between the sun and all the other planets called gravity, right?
Yes, sir.
So let's say, let's look at this lay that there's 12 things to study in our solar system.
Okay.
Okay. Now,
Mm.
there's a certain way I remembered this when I was teaching this years and years ago. Just give me 1 second. Gotta plug in this other computer here. So you have an asteroid belt, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. 9 times out of 10, when people talk about the systems of the body, there's one system that they always miss. What is the purpose of a belt? Now I'm talking specifically individually. Why do we use a belt? Why do we wear a belt?
To
Keeps us
hold
covered, right?
up
Hold up our
those. Yes.
Hold up our clothing to keep us covered, right?
Yes, sir.
What is the name of the system that covers us?
Integrity.
Orion's belt.
The integumentary system, the skin. The skin is its own system.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
So if we look at that, then if you add that one system to the 10 systems that Mullah Tanan Muhammad speaks about, there's 11. But if we look at the gravitational pull as a system, then
Mm.
we could say there's possibly 12 systems, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, now watch this. I'm gonna give you a list of all the systems. So if you can write fast enough, you can get them all down. Okay, so you have the nervous system. Okay, the nervous system is the key. That was what Mother Tanan Muhammad called the 10th system. So you got the nervous system. Then you have what's called the muscular system, right? Your muscles, right? Then you have what's called your endocrine system. That's the system that keeps everything balanced. Then you have the respiratory or respiratory system. That's your breathing, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
Then you have your digestive system. So that's 5. So you got your integumentary system. That's 6. You got your skeletal system, which is 7. You have your circulatory system, which is your 8. You have what's called the urinary system. That's 9.
Mm-hmm.
You have the lymphatic system, which is 10. Then you have the reproductive system, correct?
Yes, sir.
And I remember in a specific order because when I was teaching this, I would connect every system to an object in the solar system.
Mm.
And it just so happens that all the planets rotate around what? The sun, right?
Yes, sir.
But something about the gravitational pull of the sun that affects all the other systems, right?
Yes, sir.
So now gravity is an unseen force,
Mm-hmm.
but this unseen force seems as a point of origin from the sun, but it affects all the other systems, right?
Yes, sir.
Now, the nervous system is talking about the brain, and we're talking about an unseen force that
Mm.
affects all the other planets. What unseen force is connected to the brain that affects the rest of the body? Wouldn't that be the theta? Wouldn't that be the life force?
Oh,
So could we say the gravitational pull in the solar system is the equivalent of the study of theta in the individual? So we have actually 11 systems and the study of Dianetics.
Mm. Mm.
Can you see?
Makes sense. Yes, sir.
Okay. So when I look at the solar system, I look at it as 11 systems, because there's 11 systems in the body when you get into the level of anatomy and physiology. But now we've incorporated the tech of Dianetics to give us a 12th system, which is the equivalent to the study of gravity, the gravitational pull. Yes?
Yes, sir.
Is that making sense?
Yes, sir.
Last piece, we're going to cover this in 5 minutes or less and be done with it. So your homework assignment is to take these words that are highlighted in red. As soon as you say homework, Sister Peggy gets excited.
Hmm.
Take those words and clear those words and apply them to yourself. I'm gonna give you how I look at it, and then you can do the same thing. And then God willing, next time we'll come back, we'll discuss what we find. But when a planet is inclined to the plane of its orbit, okay, when something is inclined, doesn't it mean to bow or submit?
Yes, sir.
And if you clear the word plane, the word plane in the Merriam-Webster dictionary is going to give you a method or way of thinking. And the way of orbit is talking about a connection to the center. So a planet be inclined to the plane of its orbit is like a mind that is connected to its purpose. Does that make sense? The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan says, blessed is the one who finds his purpose and is found doing it. Okay. So when a planet is inclined to the plane of its orbit, to me, that's like a person that has made the connection to what their purpose is. That's the first part of the cycle of action. Well, what's the second part? Now you have to rotate on your axis. Meaning what? You have to do the work. Because remember, work is tone 20. And the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, no matter what's going on in your life, work, right? If you're sick, work. If you're feeling ill, work. In other words, in the language of mathematics, what does that mean? It means rotate. As long as an object is rotating, that circular object will remain upright. It's when it slows down that it begins to wobble, right? Okay, as
Hmm.
it slows down, it begins to incline and it wobbles back and forth, right? But as long as it's spinning, it remains upright. For some of us, we've worked so much during the day, we forgot that we didn't even get a chance to eat. We were just so consumed in our work, we didn't eat. Okay. And if we're inclined to the plane of our, if we're inclined to the plane of our orbit, meaning we find our purpose and we're working, we're keeping in rotation to spin, what does that do? That keeps us in our orbit. Around who? Around Allah. Yes?
Yes, sir.
Okay. But now what happens? Opposite side is this. If we begin to doubt who we are and doubt what we're supposed to do, then that's when our rotation begins to slow down, correct?
Yes, sir.
If our rotation slows down, doesn't our wobble become more and more apparent? And if we wobble too much, what happens? Don't we leave our orbit?
Yes, sir.
And if we leave our orbit, isn't it possible that we can fall into the orbit of some other planet and clash with them? So to me, the minister describing these three elements of a planet are really also describing three things we need to do to maintain our sanity: inclination, rotation, and revolution. I hope that makes sense.
Yes, sir.
It
Okay.
made me think of Job
Mm.
and him not losing all three of those things, not
Mhm.
losing his inclination. He continued to pray to Allah no matter what tragedy he endured, no matter how many losses came upon him.
Mhm.
He stayed focused on his rotation and his revolution
Mhm.
and endured through it all. So it
Mhm.
just made me think of him,
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
how we should be.
Mhm. If you look at that as a demo kit, look at the Earth, and then we have the moon, right? The moon is something that is from the Earth, but the moon is constantly pulling on the Earth, trying to take life from the Earth, right? Take the water, yes? Does that make sense? So now this moon, it's a dead thing trying to take away the life from the earth. So you have the moon pulls on the earth, but the sun is attracting the earth. There's two different things. It's different. There's a difference between being attracted to something and being pulled by something, right?
Mm. Good distinction.
So the
So-
earth is attracted to the sun. Why? The sun is giving light, life, and power, correct?
Yes, sir.
But the moon is pulling because it's trying to take. It's like two different type of people. We have some people in our life that are like sunlight. Why? We like being around them because why? They give us light, life, and power. Then there's some people that are around us because they're always trying to take something.
Mm.
Okay. But now look at the beauty of the moon and what it could teach us. Because if the moon is pulling on us, science tells us for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction, correct?
Correct.
So as the moon is pulling on us, which direction are we pulling back towards?
The sun.
So that teaches us that difficulty serves a purpose that's positive. Because the more things in life get difficult, what should we do? We should pull in the opposite direction towards who?
Allah.
Oh,
So sometimes we could say that the reason why difficulties come in our life is because maybe Allah hasn't heard from us in a little while. So the trials in life serve a positive purpose because it keeps us in our orbit around the God that we serve. I know it doesn't always happen that way. It sounds good, but the beauty of it is I believe that difficulty also serves a purpose. It keeps us prayerful. I've heard the minister say that you haven't had a whooping until you had a righteous whooping. And sometimes we got to go through trials so Allah can get a sincere prayer out of us. But sometimes we just go through the motion so we can say, I made my prayer. But it was like, we made it, but it was just, we went through the motions, right? I guess maybe I'm the only one that, I'm in a room full of clear people from the mothership, I guess. I don't know.
Undistracted, unoccupied, right?
Go ahead, Sister Anya, and then we'll go ahead and wrap this up.
when you talked about the moon pulling on the earth, I thought about the baby pulling on the breast. Because it's pulling to get nourishment to feed its life.
Mhm.
And I put a question in the chat about can we liken gravitational pull when you talked about that earlier to inclination?
Mhm.
What is your thoughts on that?
Wait, say that one more time, please.
Can we liken gravitational pull to inclination?
Well, inclination.
Or would that be something different?
No, that's a beautiful question. And I'll tell you why. I've heard the minister explain it like this. Gravitational pull and inclination. Watch this. I remember the minister teaching it like this. Look at how the earth is with respect to the sun. When the earth is bowing towards the sun, you have the season of summer, correct?
Yes.
Okay, you have a lot of heat, you have a lot of activity going on. But then what happens is the next season, as the earth is traveling around the sun, it begins to incline away from the sun, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and that season is called what?
Winter.
No, what comes before winter?
Sorry?
What comes before winter?
The fall.
Fall. Look at the word, fall.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so as the sun begins to incline away, or as you can say, when the gravitational pull of worldly things begins to attract us, and we're not inclining to God like we should,
Mm.
then we do what? We begin to
Fall and die. Yeah.
and
So
then
they're like
then
opposites
go
of
ahead,
the
sorry.
same. So they're like opposites of the same coin or thread.
What do you mean?
gravitational pull and inclination?
Well, they're not opposites because gravitational pull can cause a planet to incline.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. When you get winter, everything's cold. Well, that's when the earth is inclined away from the sun, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when we're inclined away from God, doesn't the environment seem like it gets cold?
Mm-hmm.
Don't we seem like we get cold?
So that's why I was saying that the linkage there on the same thread, because when we're pulled, when we turn away from God, there's a gravitational pull to pull us back.
Okay, I see. I
And
see.
when we're inclined towards God, there's a gravitational pull to pull us away from God. So it's like they flip-flop.
Yes, I
So
see it.
right. So when we're inclined towards him, then the pole switch and it becomes negative to try to pull us away. And when
Gotcha.
we're away from him, the pole switches again and it becomes positive to pull us back towards God.
Okay,
And so,
that's a good way of looking at it.
this is a way, yeah.
So now,
Food for
wintertime,
thought.
wintertime, we're bowed away, right?
Yes, sir.
But then the planet starts its process of beginning to bow back towards God, and that season is called what?
Spring.
And then during spring, the sign is that the earth begins to come to life again, right?
Right, right.
So here you have the four seasons,
Mm-hmm.
the relationship of the earth to the sun as a demo kit, explaining or showing us or teaching us what happens in our own life. Because in the tech, isn't that called the ups and downs?
Mm. Now, the sun itself has that same back and forth motion
Mm-hmm.
because it does an 11-year shift one
Mm-hmm.
way, and then after that 11 years, reverses and goes back 11 years the other way.
Mm-hmm. And then remember, our sun is also rotating around its center.
Mm-hmm.
So the solar system is rotating around the sun, but the solar system and the sun is rotating around something bigger than it.
Mm.
And that's why we say Allah is the true center of everything, because everything in the universe is rotating around something else except Allah.
So it's interesting that you mentioned 11 systems of the body.
Mm-hmm.
So
That's how that taking anatomy and physiology, that's just how we had to study it, because um, the integumentary system is like the last resort when your body becomes very, very toxic, meaning your kidneys and your liver aren't operating sufficiently. Your body still has to find a way to get the toxins out. Two other ways it'll use, one is your respiratory system. This is why some people have very, very bad breath. It has nothing to do with what's in the mouth. It has to deal with what's going on in your digestive system. Okay. And another thing is, being that your integumentary system is the largest, this is another thing that your body will use to get toxins out of the body. So when a person is suffering from different type of rashes and different blemishes and breakouts, when you put when you put those topical creams on it and it goes away, it's not that it's going away. Those creams are driving driving it back into your body. But what's coming out of the body is what the body can't process from the liver anymore. The liver is overtaxed. So the body says, okay, we have to get the toxins out. What happens? It comes out through the skin. And that's where fasting comes in. When we fast and do a lot of water, we give the body a rest, you give the liver and the kidneys a chance to get back to normal function. So in anatomy and physiology, the integumentary system is another system that we have to study. And I know that was just a long-winded response, but Sister Peggy,
I used to be a certified wound care nurse.
there you go.
And so integumentary for us is your barrier. It's the
Yes.
first barrier in your immune system. That's the way I see it.
Mhm.
If you're that kind of nurse, because you want to protect that, because a lot of people think that your skin is not dynamic. You think it's just there to hold things in. But but of course, as you said, you can get toxins just by putting the wrong kind of makeup, or use the wrong kind of lotions or soap or something on your face, and it just doesn't just stay there and wash off. It absorbs because it has a lot of blood vessels.
Mm-hmm. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Real quickly, I just want to show this to the believers. This, let me go back here. Make sure these things are uploaded first. Okay. I have uploaded three, if you include the black hole. Can you see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Black hole has been uploaded. Oh, someone's already been watching. And then I uploaded Jonah, an allegory for aberration and sowing tares among the wheat. So those are two new ones. If you get a chance to get on the YouTube channel and you are enjoying what you're seeing, please drop a comment, suggestions. If you see an error, please make a note of the error so I can correct it. Sister Angela, and we will.
Yeah, I was thinking about the skin, and listening to Sister Peggy and yourself took me back to my cosmetology days when I studied. And one of the things, when you sit not in a hairstylist chair, not even a barber, but a cosmetologist is, you study the science of it. And you examine your client just by looking at their skin. You can tell health issues. You can tell if they drink enough water. Sometimes you can tell if they're diabetic, if they're on medication. There's a lot that you can tell. And I think we can use that also as how we deal with each other on a Dianetic level. You don't really always have to talk to a person to see that there's something off. Their shine is not, as Muslims, we're supposed to look a certain as far as our skin. My headpiece might be crooked when I came in the mosque, or it may not be iron. This is a part of the epidermis, and it's an organ. In cosmetology, the skin is an organ itself. So how we examine the outside can predetermine how we take if one can be pulled into a whole nother universe, and how we can address an issue and help it instead of exacerbate it.
Yes, ma'am. That it?
Yes, sir.
All praises due to Allah. I hope that today's brief discussion on word clearing solved some misunderstoods. And I hope that we can now look at our study guides a little bit deeper and start looking at the minister's words. Not saying that we do this, I'm just saying, just speaking in general, we can look more into it like the formulae that it is and start to audit. Meaning what? Go back to the beginning, go over it again, and just pick up all the data we can find. And then in doing so, the end result is now our mind will begin to line up with his mind, which is already lined up with the other two, correct?
Yes, sir.
So that being said and done, family, thank you for your time and attention. As always, if you have a suggestion, if you have a specific class or a question, you can send me an email. I would more than be happy to look at that as an assignment and make it the foundation of a Zoom meeting in the future. And with that being said and done, Sister Angela, would you do us the honors, please?
Yes, sir. Inshallah. Let's pray. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, in the most holy name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful. All praise is due to Allah, the Lord of all the worlds, the beneficent, the most merciful, Master of this day of judgment now which we live in. Thee alone do we serve, and thee alone do we beseech for thine aid. O Allah, guide us along the straight path, the path upon thou hast bestowed thy favors, and not the path upon wrath is brought down, nor those who go astray if they've heard thy teachings. Say he, Allah is one, Allah is whom is independent, upon we all depend. He that begets not, nor is he begotten. There is none like unto him. And I bear witness that nothing and no one deserves to be served nor worshipped beside Allah, who came in the divine person of Master Prophet Muhammad. I bear witness that the most honorable Elijah Muhammad is the exalted and risen Christ. And I further bear witness that the honorable minister was Farrakhan, his divine comforter, God, Messiah, and Amen.
I mean,
I mean,
Assalamu alaikum, family.
Wa alaikum salam.
Allah continue to
wa
bless
alaikum
us.
assalam.
Alaikum salam.
Happy Gregorian calendar New Year.
Yeah.